So the year 2000 rolled around. We were now in Deerfield Beach, Florida. And I really, again, didn't take kindly to this move. We were settled in Texas. I was playing football. I had a little girlfriend, although that ended. I mean, I really didn't want to move to Florida. I thought it was unnecessary. However, man, I was shocked as to how quickly things began to pick up in my life. My birthday is January the 16th. So, right at the beginning of the year when we had landed in Florida, I was about to turn 17, which meant that I could work. I could have my own job, have my own money. And convenient for me, there was a Taco Bell restaurant not even a mile up the street. In fact, it was so close. We lived in a middle class apartment complex. It was a pretty nice place. It had a gate. You had to have a key to get in. And I remember it was located dead smack right next to the Florida Turnpike. So I could look outside the window or come outside into the front yard of where we stayed, and I could see the turnpike right there, cars flying, zooming by on their commute. Right next to us, where we lived in the apartment complex, was a bridge that allowed for traffic to cross over the turnpike. And that bridge was no more than a 50-yard walk from the entrance to our apartment to that particular bridge. Well, anyway, I would ride my bike up that bridge, ride over the Florida Turnpike, and that Taco Bell was so close that I could nearly coast with the momentum that I had picked up coming down that hill off of that bridge. I could have coasted nearly into Taco Bell. That's how close it was to where we lived. I was excited. I remember going in Taco Bell and asking for a job, and they hired me on the spot. It's interesting that most restaurants have high turnover. It's not a job that most people take seriously, and really, when you think about it, next time you go to a restaurant, take a look at those that are working in there. They're usually young people, high school age. This way, the corporation gets away with not paying them. There's always the little tricks to the trade, but that's not why we're here. I got the job at Taco Bell, and at first they just simply positioned me on the register. I'm 17. I'm shedding all the baby fat that I had had. I told you in the last episode how I had bought the Exenogen RF1 bottles. I was working at Kroger. I went through all of that already. So here now I'm slimmed down, getting older, and beginning to come into myself. And I remember one particular Sunday working at that Taco Bell, the assistant manager happened to be a Latino gentleman that went by the name of Robert. I'll never forget Robert. Robert, if he's alive out there today, I pray the best for him because Robert was a real friend. Well, he could have been my dad because that's just how much older he was than me at the time. And I remember he was on the drive-through register with the headpiece taking orders. And the young lady that worked with us, I remember her vividly in my mind, but I cannot remember her name. She decided that she was going to clock out and leave, said that she was sick and wasn't feeling well. Again, another high school student working in this establishment. And when she left, the Sunday lunch rush was just about to hit us. Now, for those of you that don't know, I'm going to enlighten or educate you here real quick. Restaurant traffic is pretty slow on Sunday until Sunday worshipers, folk that attend church on Sunday, get out of church. And when they get out of church, believe me, they're looking for something to eat. That pastor then preached for 3 hours. That they done picked up offering twice. You done heard 3 songs by the choir. Folk ready to eat. And so, right when Homegirl left us, Patty was her name. Wow, I cannot believe that 22 years later I remember her name. Patty clocks out and says, I'm sick, and she went home. Now, she was working the front counter. I hadn't been trained yet to do the hot line. What is the hot line? Well, there's a cold line and a hot line in Taco Bell. For all you Taco Bell employees out there, you know what I mean. The cold line has the lettuce, the tomatoes, the cheese, the guacamole, the sour cream, all that kind of stuff that you stuff the end product with. The hot line has your beef, your chicken, your steak. It has your red sauce, your cheese sauce, your beans, your rice, those type of things. I was not trained to do the hot side of the line. But when Patty left us in this predicament and church folks started getting out of church, we were getting swamped. Now, we lived off of a street in almost said Fort Lauderdale, which Deerfield Beach is 30 miles north of Fort Lauderdale. We lived on a street in Deerfield Beach called Hillsborough. And that was the main stretch. All the theaters, clothing stores, record stores, all of that was on Hillsborough. We were the main strip that went through Deerfield Beach. So we got a lot of traffic. And when that lunch rush hit us, and Patty had left me and Robert in the store by ourselves, we were in a trouble. We were in a pickle. Excuse me. I remember Robert looked at me and he said, Andre, you're about to have a baptism by fire. And I looked at Robert like, what you mean? You know, he's like, bro, you're going to be put on the hotline. But check this out. I wasn't just put on the hotline during normal business hours. Neither was I just put on the hotline to make only the drive-through customers' food or only the front counter customers' food. I had to do both because Robert had to work both registers, the front counter register and the drive-through register simultaneously. I had to learn how to make the food pretty much on my own. I'll never forget that Sunday. It was a baptism by fire for real, for real. And I remember when I came to an item now, tacos, that's simple. And you're looking at the screen. So for example, if somebody orders a crunchy taco and they don't want any lettuce, you'll see that on the screen. Taco, -sign, LETT, no lettuce. That's self-explanatory. Meat, cheese, and lettuce if they did want the lettuce or the cheese. But again, like I said, if they didn't want one particular item, it would show on the screen. But when it came to stuff like Mexican pizzas, when it came to stuff like certain burritos, the Burrito Supreme, at that time they had the grill stuffed burrito, which came with a lot of ingredients. I was stuck. I didn't know what to do. So I remember having to ask Robert in the middle of the rush, what does a bean burrito get? Now, you may laugh at that. It's more than just beans. It's red sauce, onions, and cheese. And, you know, you're tempted to put all of the ingredients on the cold side in that burrito because you don't know. But then what happens if you do that? A customer who's familiar with how this thing is supposed to taste, who's familiar with the product and what should be in it, can bring it back. And when you're the only person cooking the food for both the front counter customers and the drive-through customers, you don't want to be hampered by customers coming back with food that wasn't made correctly. That's only slowing you down more. So what we came up with was Robert gave me a headset and he had me listen in to what the customer in the drive-thru was ordering so that I could start making it immediately. And then because at that time, now you may think that's standard procedure now, but in the year 2000, that's not how they worked. The hotline cook would not have an headpiece, but they started doing that here recently. And I remember I was one of the first people to start doing that due to my boss's direction. And then if I came to a particular item, for example, the grilled stuffed burrito gets 2 scoops of meat. It gets 1 scoop of beans. It gets 1 scoop of rice. You put a little red sauce on it. Then you put a little bit of the creamy jalapeno sauce on it. Then you put guacamole. Then you put sour cream. I didn't know all that. And so when I would come to those kind of items, I remember begging Robert to tell me what went in what. And he was very patient. He was very patient. And he was up here running to the front counter, over here running to the drive-thru window. And he would have enough patience to scream back at me, Andre, the grilled stuffed burrito gets blah, 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 blah. And then he'd go back, and we got through that day somehow. I'll never forget, Taco Bell came out with the chalupa around the same time that I was working at this Taco Bell. And at that time, they had 3 flavors. How many of you remember the Santa Fe chalupa? How many of you remember the Baja chalupa? And how many of you remember, which is still on the menu, the Supreme chalupa with the sour cream? Then they had the nacho, actually it was 4. They had the nacho cheese chalupa. It was just meat and a whole bunch of nacho cheese and of course the lettuce and tomatoes if the customer wanted it. And I remember there was a gentleman, a black guy that would come in there on Sundays. This brother was serious about his chalupas. He must have tried them somewhere on the highway because he was a truck driver. He'd drive his 18-wheeler into the parking lot, get out, and this cat would order 100 chalupas. I ain't lying. 100. Now, that's cool when you ain't in a lunch rush because you can sustain that kind of dropping the flatbread, frying them, and getting the order out. But when you have a dining room full of customers, and then you also have a drive-through full of customers that want chalupas as well. See, the chalupa fryer only fried 6 chalupa shells at a time. So we would prep maybe, 9 chalupas because the thing about it is that they had very short shelf life. And if you fry too many of them at one time, they'll rot, or they'll, rather, instead of saying rot, they'll dry out. And so we would only produce maybe 9, maybe 11 of them, and that was only during a lunch rush. But this guy would come in there and order 100 of them, and I'd be like, oh my goodness. And so we've got you're at the fryer literally 15 minutes, frying flatbread and making them into the chalupa shell so that you can serve this customer and the other customers who are buying these chalupas like hotcakes. Because when those chalupas first came out, oh my goodness. I remember they had a recording and they would teach you what to say based on that recording if you had to work the drive-thru window or if you were working the front counter register. Hello, my name is Andre. Would you like to try and do chalupa today? Man, I remember that like it was yesterday. And they were the hot item. They were the brand new item, so everybody was buying them. So you can imagine we would be stuck whenever this fella would come in, which would be like twice a month on a Sunday, and order 100 chalupas. I learned valuable lessons working at Taco Bell. I really did, and I am forever grateful for the lessons that I learned. But on our next episode, you're going to find out about some things that happened between me and my good buddy Robert, the assistant manager who promoted me to the hotline cook. Yeah, the story gets deeper, the plot gets thicker.